Legacies. Welcome to our daily devotional. Today we are going to continue our devotional on the reluctant servant, which is Moses, right? And so we're going to continue his story. So where we left off yesterday, Moses was 40 years old. He was a escapee, or went out to the desert because he had killed a man. So he was running from Pharaoh, who wanted to kill him, and he went to the desert. And when he got to the desert, he met Jethro, and he got married to his wife, and Zipporah, and he has a child. And so that's where we left off. He's 40 years old, and we talked about the implications of Moses' early life. Before the age of 5, he escaped genocide, right? He escaped this treacherous river, the Nile River, in a boat, and ends up in the palace. So he's right now living kind of this really different kind of life and experience. But then he finds himself in the desert, and then he spends the next 40 years, from 40 to 80, in this desert, living a very mundane life. So despite his early beginnings and all of the drama that was there, after he escapes as a murderer, from the murder that he commits, he's in the desert and he's a shepherd. He's just a simple shepherd. And like I said, he's 40 years old when he arrives there, and he's there for 40 years. The King James versions gives us a good time frame there. So we know he's 80 years old in the desert when all of a sudden he's tending to the flock. And we're in Exodus, the 3rd chapter. And at the beginning of the 3rd chapter, something unique happens. He encounters a bush that's burning, and the bush is burning, but it's never consumed. So here is fire, 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 which this is actually normal in this part of the country, or this region of the world, excuse me. And because of the heat, intense heat, there are some bushes that would just combust, but usually they burn out, right? And then they fizzle out and it's done. And I remember when I visited this part of the world, we got to see the type of bush that typically does that in the area of the region that typically burns this way. So the bush burning by itself wasn't really amazing until the bush wasn't consumed by the fire, right? So there's something unique about the fire, not the bush, that makes it not be consumed. And so here it is, it's combusted, but it's not consumed. And so, of course, Moses thinks this is peculiar. It's normal that a bush would start on fire because of the intense heat in the region, but it's not normal that the bush wouldn't burn up and be done with it. And so he goes closer to where the bush is, and he starts to hear from the Lord. And the Lord knows that he's paying attention, and the Lord tells him, listen, take off your shoes, take off your sandals, because where you're standing is holy ground. And you might be thinking, well, why is the ground holy in this particular place? Well, it's holy because the presence of God, right? And so the presence of God is here in this bush, and it's not consumed, so that's miraculous already. And then he's like, take off your shoes, you're standing on holy ground. And Moses is like, he's 80 years old, you guys. Now you got to remember that Moses is 80 years old, so he's not like some young naive person. This is a miracle that he's seen a lot in his life, and this is like something that's okay. Wow. Okay, so he takes off his shoes immediately, right? He knows that he needs to honor and reverence God. And then God says that who he is. He identifies himself, I'm God, that you're the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So he's like, okay, I know who you are. You're the God of the Hebrews, right? Because we're talking about a time in which people have many gods. And so he identified himself. Okay, you are the God of my ancestors. I got you. So he takes off his shoes, he's on holy ground, and God has a message for him. And his message is this: listen, I saw the oppression of your people. I saw the oppression of my people, right? Because the Hebrews are God's chosen people. So he's like, look, I saw the oppression of my people, and I get it. They are suffering, and they've called out to me, and you know what? I'm going to rescue them. I want to set them free, and I'm going to allow them to go into a new land, a new place, and out of this place of bondage and into a new place. And I'm sure Moses is thinking, that's wonderful, because I was for the people anyway. I committed that murder trying to, support my people. It didn't kind of work out, I made some bad decisions, but at the end of the day, I'm glad, to see the people be rescued. I'm glad to see them work it out. And so Moses, I'm sure, is excited when he hears that. But then here comes the next part, right? And so in the Exodus, the 3rd chapter, and we're going to the 10th verse, God starts to talk to Moses in particular. He's like, well, listen, I know, remember all the stuff I said about the Hebrews being saved from their, oppression and their bondage? And he's like, yeah, God, I was with you on that. That's great. I'm glad you're going to save the people. And he's like, yeah, and I'm going to use you. And so Moses, this is why he becomes the reluctant servant. What's about to happen next, this exchange is about to happen next, is what makes him reluctant. So in the beginning, he just kind of listens, right? And so he's like, okay, well, what's going to happen? And he's like, you're going to go to Pharaoh and you're going to tell Pharaoh to set my people free. You're going to tell them to let my people go and to let them go into the desert to worship for 3 days, to worship me for 3 days. Okay, well, for one, there are many, many, many Hebrews. This is not a small group of people. We're talking about, some people estimate up to 2 million Hebrew slaves. So this is a lot of people, right? And so the children of Israel is not a small body. You want them to leave for 3 days and go worship in the desert. The implications of that make us feel like, you're not going to go for 3 days and come back. You're going to go for 3 days and you're going to find some rest there and stay away, right? But God is telling Moses that this is what he's going to present to Pharaoh. So what else does he say? He said, listen, this is the sign that I'm going to be with you, right? Because Moses is getting like, okay, well, what are we going to do? And so God is like, okay, the sign that I'm going to be with you is that you will have the staff. So he says, pick up the staff, or he already has a staff because he's shepherding, right? In the desert, he's like, okay, take your staff, throw it on the ground. He throws it on the ground, it becomes a snake. He says, pick it up by the tail, and it becomes a staff again. So that's miracle number one. He says, you're going to show them this, and that's going to teach them. Now, God knows that's not going to be the end of it. But so he says, well, and I have another thing for you. I want you to use your cloak. He says, you put your hand in your cloak like here by your chest, right? And when you put your hand in your cloak and take it out, it's going to be leprous. It's going to be all white, like decaying, about to die. And you put it back in, it'll become fine again. And so he says, okay, do that. So these things seem fine with Moses. We don't have him objecting at this point. But he's like, okay, all right. You know, he's getting with it. And he says, so these signs will be the signs so that they'll know that I'm sending you, and I'm going to send you into the land of Canaan. Really, God is about to send. So the mountain that Moses is standing on is called Mount Sinai. He is going to bring the Israelites back to that mountain. That's the mountain that they are going to worship at. And God makes that very clear. So when we get later on into the story, we'll figure out what happens that takes them so long and why they're wandering for so long, because the distance is very short. The mountain that Moses is on is the mountain that they will return back to worship. Okay, so he says they're going to come out. They're going to come out with money. They're going to come out with all these clothes. They're going to come out with all this stuff. They're going to come out, right? And the children of Israel are going to come out of this place. Okay, very good. So then all that sounds fine. And then Moses gets a little bit concerned. Well, first he says, who am I going to say sent me? Because again, remember, this is a time in which people worship many gods, okay? And we call it polytheism, right? There were many gods in this place. And so the Egyptians worship all kinds of things. They worship Pharaoh as God, they worship the frog, they worship the Nile, they worship all kinds of things. And so when if you were to say at this time, God sent me, they would be wanting to know what God sent you, right? Because at that time there were so many different gods. Again, polytheism meaning more than one or multiple gods. So what happens is Moses says, I just want to clarify. You're going to send me. Got it. I'm going to have these powers. Got it. Now, who am I going to say, though, has sent me? Because they may not really believe that, that you're their God. Maybe you think they think you're an Egyptian God, or this is a trick, or what am I going to say? I need some more confidence. And so God says to Moses, listen, tell them I am sent you, right? I am that I am that never changes. This title for God, I am, is saying there's no shadow of me. I've not changed. I'm the same God of creation as I am in Revelations. I am the God of their forefathers. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am, and I'm not changing. I am a steadfast, strong God, present God in times of trouble. So this is a big name for God. And he says, look, tell them I am sent them. That's who you tell them sent you. Okay. So when he goes out, I am sent them. Okay. So now it becomes an interesting thing. You would think, okay, Moses will be more confident. He has the miracles now. He's going to put his hands in his cloak and it's going to turn leprous, and the snake is going to come from the staff. And, you know, he knows that Pharaoh's going to be turned a different way. He's not going to have the right attitude, but God is going to work it out. He's seen the bush burning. All of these things should make him feel confident. Now he knows what name to call God when he goes to these people to tell them that he's going to set them free. And yet, here comes the kicker. Moses is like, one more thing. He says, you know what, God? I don't speak well. I don't speak well. I have a hard time with my speech. You know about the impediment. I get a little nervous. You know what? You should send someone else. That's exactly what he says to God. You should send someone else, whoever you want, but just don't send me. Okay, so what's happening here? How is he going to say, God, send whoever you want? Well, God is already sending whoever he wants, right? By sending Moses. But Moses' position is, anybody else is going to be great at this, but I'm not the best. I think your plan is wonderful. I'm glad they're going to be free. But yeah, if you could just send somebody else, that would be 100. No, what happens? God is like, the word says, and I'm going to read this one, Exodus 4, now we're in Exodus 4 chapter, the 14th verse, it says, the anger of the Lord was kindled and burned against Moses. He said, is there not, and then he talks about his brother, but before that, actually, I'm going to go back up. So the 14th verse says that God was like, I feel a certain way about this, okay? I don't like the way that you are responding to what I have told you to do, right? But God said in verse 11, he said, the Lord said to him, who has made man's mouth? Okay, this is when Moses said he can't speak. Or who makes the mute or deaf, or the seeing or the blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now then, go, and I will be with your mouth, and I will teach you what you shall say. And so God is like, he's feeling a certain way about Moses' response. He's told Moses this whole plan, not all of the gritty details, but a good picture of what's about to happen. And Moses is like, yeah, but the speech thing, I don't know if I can do it. And God is like, listen, didn't I make you? I know how you speak. You think I would pick you if I thought that you couldn't do what I'm calling you to do? The reason you can do what I'm calling you to do is not because you were the baby that survived genocide, or the baby that lived through the Nile River, or the man who got away with murder and ran into the desert, or the slave that was raised as a prince, or the farmer or the shepherd in the wilderness, or even this man that is thrown down a stick and is turned into a snake. No, only reason that you're going to do what I'm saying that you can do is because I'm going to empower you to do it. And this is a big point for not just Moses, but also for us. Listen, I don't know where you came from. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what mistakes you've made in your life, or how old you are, or what you thought you'd be doing by now. But here we have Moses, an 80-year-old man in the middle of the desert, talking to a burning bush. And God is saying to him, listen, if I purpose for you to do it, then you're going to do it. And if I set you forth on this plan, then it's going to be accomplished, because I am not a man that I should lie. And he tells Moses this later, nor the son of man that I should repent. Have I not said it? Shall I not do it? He's like, listen, at the end of the day, I'm going to do what I set out to do. This whole plan that I've set out before you is not because you are so great, or because you have endured so much, or because you are so wise, or because of the mistakes you've made, or the mistakes that have been forgiven. It doesn't have anything to do with where you've been or where you're going. It only has to do with who you're with, and you are with me. And that makes this work out. And so it's an encouragement for both of us. We know that Moses is going to join Aaron. If you read ahead, you'll find out that Aaron, who is Moses' brother, is going to join Moses, and they're going to work together to do this thing. But God's word still stands. Even after he appoints Aaron, he says, look, you're still going to be who I said you're going to be on this journey. Now, he can come with you and he can talk if you want him to, but I am going to be the one that's going to be directing you, and then you can direct him. You can delegate. I'm okay with that. But I just want to be clear that the power, the authority, the direction, these miracles are coming from me, God Most High. Not another source. It's not because of the way that we speak that we are used by God. It's not because of where we come from that we are used by God. We are used by God because he has chosen us. And if you want to do the work that God has called you to do, all you simply have to do is what Moses had a hard time doing here. receive it. Yep, there's a work that God has called for you. I'm sure there is. And he wants to see it accomplished in your life. Will you trust him through that process? I'll be praying that you do. Please be praying for me as well. And we're going to continue the journey of the reluctant servant. Let's see what God does next. Have a wonderful day. Until tomorrow, be blessed.